The greatest danger to our society is not the outright criminal, but the person who is willing to compromise their principles for personal gain. Martin Luther King Jr. Welcome to Insights, hosted by the Lighthouse at Ephesus. Join us as we probe the mind of our host for insights about himself. Stick around for how you can gain insights about yourself and the people in your life. Thanks for being here. Pull out your metaphorical mirror and get ready to reflect. Did you hear about the latest insider trading scandal? Imagine our elected officials do stuff that they're not supposed to do. Shocker. What about the latest abuse scandal where someone in a position of authority takes advantage of somebody that is subordinate to them? What about when we see famous figures get accused of infidelity? The reason that we find this stuff surprising or shocking is because these people have violated a set of principles, either what we assumed their principles were based off their station or what they told us their principles were. Either way, their actions don't meet with our expectations. But what about you? What are your principles? In our videos, we establish definitions first so we have a common framework, a common understanding that we can work from. So what is a principle? Well, first and foremost, a principle is derived from your purpose. What animates you? What motivates you? And there's a ton of stuff out there in the world that claims to help you find your purpose, and most of it is just a load of hot garbage. Purpose is very individualized, it's internally motivated, and it's something you're going to have to do some soul searching to find if you don't know what it is. It's not something that anybody else can really effectively help you with. If you're not sure what your purpose is, if you've never stopped and thought about it, your purpose is what gets you up out of bed in the morning. It's what animates you. It's what motivates you. If you could spend your life working on one thing, and that, whatever it is, that one thing, that idea that gets you excited, that is your purpose. Tangent about purpose done. Principles serve your purpose. They connect your purpose to your moral system. Put another way, principles are a functional application of your morals in service of your purpose. One of the most important facets of a principle is that they're absolute. They are the same every day of the week, every minute of the day, every year of your life. There's no situational changes. They are what they are. They're set in stone, as far as you're concerned. And because of that permanence and that rigidity, your principles form the foundation of your personal belief system. So I'll use myself as an example. I try to keep things simple. It seems like simple is usually better. So in the spirit of that, I decided that I needed to split my principles into kind of two areas. There is internal, how I conduct myself inside my head, what I do with my thought processes, and kind of how I want that to be regulated, and then how I deal with the outside world, how I interact and deal with other people. Going just a little bit deeper, when I'm talking about what's inside my head, I'm talking mostly about my thought processes and trying to control and affect what I think, because that is something that you can modify with intentionality. For external conduct, there's two things there: what you say and what you do. I spent a little bit of time in the Navy, and after my enlistment was over, I decided to go to college for a little bit. While I was in college, I attended an English class where we read the book Moral Politics. It was a really interesting book because it was all about the use of language and framing, how the way something is worded, the way something is said, either questions or statements, affects how we think about those things and can actually tinge our answers and shape our overall long-term impression of it. It was a really interesting book. The guy that wrote it is a flaming liberal, and I'm not particularly fond of his politics, but the front part of that book was all about the theory of it, and it was really, really interesting. And that was one of the things that really kind of put me on a trajectory to develop the first and most important principle that I have now, which is seek truth. And you'll see that principle of seeking truth baked into pretty much everything I do. And as a follow-on, because it's my business, pretty much everything that Ephesus does. So how do I go about seeking truth? Now, the first thing is that you have to believe that there's a reason for everything. It may be really obscure, it might not make sense, but logically, there is a cause and effect, a causal relationship for everything that happens. Now, once you accept that there is a reason that things happen, then you have to start questioning what you're being told about what's happening. What are the motivations and the biases of the people that are telling you those things? And you also have to question your own motivations and biases and stop and think about, is that coloring or tainting my impression of it? Am I allowing that to steer me away from what the truth of the matter really is? Most importantly, you have to be dedicated to the search for truth, because some truths can be really, really ugly. And when I say that, a lot of people, including myself, a lot of times think about the external truths of the world, thinking about some of the darker chapters in human history. And that is certainly valid. But a lot of the darkest truths that we need to face is inside ourselves. The things that we keep hidden, the things that we don't want to deal with. If you're going to seek truth, you have to work through that stuff. It requires internal honesty. You have to be willing to face those parts. And even after you get done with that, you have to be honest with yourself in knowing what your blind spots are, knowing where your biases are, and being able and willing to admit if you're wrong about something. Anyone who's had an infant or spent a lot of time watching infants knows that sometimes their poo can be liquidy. And the thing that is super frustrating to a lot of parents, I think, is that a lot of times that baby is perfectly content to sit there and play in that poo and just be happy as a clam, not say anything about it, not let you know that it happened. The problem is that the longer that stuff stays there, the more problems, the more irritation it'll cause, and more pain that results from that when you are trying to clean it up later. Now, that's the best version of what can happen when a baby has liquid craps. Again, if you have an infant or you spend a lot of time around them, you have seen the blowout, where containment fails and you now have poo that is the consistency of pudding or worse, and it gets everywhere. If you're lucky, it gets contained inside some clothing, but if not, all of a sudden you have a small human being running around with poo on their hands, their feet, their knees, and they're getting it everywhere that they've moved and they've touched. It is a disaster. It is literally a show. Moral relativism is the cultural equivalent of toddler liquid poo. Historically, it's affected college-age people, but it's becoming more and more ingrained in grade school education, to the point where it is actually supplanting traditional worldviews and becoming almost the de facto worldview for the new generations. And like the toddler liquid poos, as long as it's kind of contained inside that one person, the longer it's there, the more damage it'll do if and when that person finally realizes that it is a load of crap, and then they start trying to clean it up. It's going to leave some sores, and it's going to take some time to heal. Where it's really bad is when that person has enough of it that they take it out and they start spreading it around. It causes all kinds of problems. and it leaves people who know better to clean up the mess. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. That was Jesus praying to God for the disciples shortly before he was arrested. That was his final blessing for them. That was Jesus going and asking God for the things that they needed to be equipped with after he was gone. Sanctify them in truth. Grow them in truth. Make them more alive in truth. Pretty profound. Probably means it's a pretty good principle. I'm married to the best woman I know. She is beautiful and she is kind. She is loving. She is absolutely amazing. And we are a team. We function together to make our household and our family work. But we don't always agree on eye to eye. We do have disagreements. Every couple does. For me to honor my wife, to build her up, to make our relationship stronger, whenever we have a disagreement, and she does this for me too, we approach each other in love. We speak to each other in love. So what does that look like? First, to speak in love, you have to speak truth. Don't shy away from being honest with that person. There's a caveat there, though. Being honest doesn't mean that you have to be mean or hurtful. It's possible and beneficial to deliver hard truths in a loving manner. But if you try to avoid a hard truth to spare someone's feeling, you're actually hurting them. They might not realize what they're doing is a problem, or they might not realize the issues that they're causing for themselves or for other people. It's not loving to allow those things to continue without being addressed. Two really important facets of speaking to someone in love is that love demands respect and it demands accountability. If you love that person, you will treat them and speak to them with respect and with accountability, and that cuts both ways. But equally, perhaps even more importantly, is that love redeems and restores. When you are speaking in love, you are speaking to try to help that person, to elevate them out of a destructive behavior and to improve their life, their relationships, whatever it is that the topic is. And I think especially in the context of close interpersonal relationships, when you're speaking to someone in love, you automatically leave room that I'm wrong. I didn't understand what was going on here. I didn't have the full picture, and it's me that needs work. And if that other person is speaking to you in love, all of a sudden you're on the receiving end, but it's a great thing that you help each other grow as a result. As a practical example, and pretty much every marriage goes through this at some point, at multiple points, every once in a while, balls get dropped and stuff just doesn't get done around the house. The way to address that in love is to say, hey, I thought that you were going to take care of these things and it didn't happen. Is there something wrong? Is there something I don't know about? Or are you just overloaded? What can I do to help you, get this stuff back on track? Whenever my wife and I have those conversations and we both enter into them the same way, we don't come into them angry or aggressive or, putting the blame on the other person. It's a matter of saying, this thing isn't going the way it's supposed to. What's going on and how can I help you fix this problem? In Romans chapter 12, Paul said, "Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good." A while back, my family and I were out shopping. It was me, my wife, my son, and my daughter. At the time, my daughter was still an infant in one of the car seats that my wife was carrying at the time. We heard gunshots. I rounded up my family, had everyone linked together, and got out and started heading to our car to get away from that situation. As we're moving to the car, I heard gunshots very close behind us. There's a feeling that you get in the pit of your stomach when you realize that danger is very, very close to your family and you're on the wrong side. That the danger is closer to your family than it is to you. You move as quickly as you can to get between your family and that threat. And you do what you gotta do to stop that threat. Thankfully, this was a scenario that my family and I experienced in a family emergency readiness class. I understand, and my heart goes out to the people who have experienced that in real life. That is horrifying. The fact that it happens in real life further underlines the import of being ready to defend the people that you love, and if you make the choice that I have made, to defend all innocent people. My personal choice is to defend innocence whenever and however I can. When we think of innocence, we think of vulnerable populations, children, the infirmed, the elderly, but really, everyone, including able-bodied adults, are innocent. And there's some people out there that either aren't willing or aren't equipped to defend themselves. With that, I have to prioritize. My family comes first. Once my family is secure, then I can start worrying about other people. To the same token, I also have to accept that defending innocence may require sacrifice from me in some way. The most extreme version of the encounter is I may have to lay down my life to save somebody else's. Regardless of the situation, you do what you have to end the threat. When you talk about defend innocence, a lot of people's minds go to the active shooter scenario that I described or something similar to it. We're talking about lethal force, the possibility of death or grave injury. And that is absolutely true. But the situations for defending innocence go way, way beyond that. Most importantly, I have to make sure that I am doing my best to draw closer to Jesus, to be more like him. And I have to make sure that I am leading my home and raising my kids to be the same way. If I am not seeing to my family's spiritual fitness, then nothing else I do really matters that much. When I walk out my door, I need to be prepared to defend innocence out in the world. I carry a gun and an IFAK. If you don't know what an IFAK is, you should look it up. You need one. I'm politically active because I want to protect my family and the other citizens in this country from a government that has taken on monstrous proportions in every conceivable sense. And finally, I do this. I do this to inspire you to go do the same. Whatever your principles are, go be a flame for others to see and to get hope from. Go be a flame to spark change. Go be a flame to light an otherwise ever-darkening world. Be doers of the word and not hearers only. James 1:22. So let's put a bow on top. What are my principles? How I think, how I speak, and how I act. How I think, seek truth. How I speak, speak in love. How I act, defend innocence. Now, my principles may not be yours, but they are universally valid, so if you're looking for some, they'll work. And as you're poking around our other videos or merchandise or whatever, you'll find that Ephesus is built on those same three principles because it's my business. Let's talk about your principles. Your principles are guardrails. They define what you will and won't do. Maybe you won't move a couch.
Pivot!
Regardless, if you don't have principles, you're going to be blown around by the winds of whatever's popular. And history has shown that the mob is rarely, if ever, right. In December of 2020, we watched, a lot of times live, as people burned, looted, and destroyed for questionable motives. A lot of it was bad people taking advantage of a bad situation. It was exacerbated by good people looking the other way, often being shamed into inaction. And the rotten cherry on top of that whole nasty sundae was the vultures, the opportunists that swooped in and made everything worse. The summer of 2020 is the embodiment of a society that has no principles, that has embraced moral relativism, and is gleefully smearing crap all over the place. Unfortunately, we can't give principles to people en masse. It's a very personal thing. What about you? You need an internal compass. First, you've got to figure out what your purpose is. If you don't know, you need to spend some time and some work figuring out what that is. And then you need to define your principles based off of your purpose and the moral system that you ascribe to. Don't overcomplicate it. Just because it's important doesn't mean it has to be complex. And if you're not sure where to start, for all of those things, for your purpose, for your morals and your principles, the Bible is a really, really good place to start. However you choose to define that stuff, live as you see fit, guided by your principles. Bearing in mind that eventually you are going to have to account for the things that you've done in your life. Regardless, principles aren't principles, and they don't mean anything if you don't put them into action. Practical application of principles is what Ephesus is about. That's our shtick. If that sounds like it interests you, if you want to know more, if you want to follow along in this journey, be part of it, start your own journey, then follow, subscribe wherever you're finding this video. The best way to stay up on what's going on is to subscribe to our newsletter. One of the best things, the most important things that you can do is to share this video. Or at least, if you don't want to share the video, fine. Go talk to the people in your life about this stuff. Ideas don't spread on their own. They need people to carry that torch, to pass it on, to light other flames. I'm doing what I can. I can't do it alone. If you're watching this video, it's time for you to get involved. It's time for you to be a light to the people in your lives. Thanks for spending time here. Thanks for watching. You can find us at lighthouse.ephesus.com. If you want to support the channel, you can buy some merch. But most importantly, God bless.